kids to go topless. As a matter of respect, men shouldn't go topless just because they can. Doesn't mean they should. Right? Women can't.
Well,
if women did go topless, the chances are that men would be all over them, right?
Yeah, there's two different standards there, right?
Yeah. So
men I don't mind that. I don't mind that at all. That wouldn't bother me in the least.
Yeah. Men should not be allowed to go topless.
Yeah. Yeah, it wouldn't bother me in the least.
Yeah. I think that it's about that sort of time. We need to start, putting some better standards in place. It's fine for kids, up to while they're at school, they can go topless. But once you've left school, hey, stop it.
Yeah.
Be sensible, be calm and collected. And I find it, I just find it wrong that we do allow that. Anyway. Okay, moving on. That oil slick, Mike, won't go away, will it?
I don't think it's going to.
You sent us some pictures. So on there, the kind of whitish, brownish, sausagey things that are in the water, they're kind of to stop it, are they?
Yeah, but there's about a 6-foot gap where there's nothing. So the water takes the easiest path, right? So it's just going around and going into the Welland River anyways, because that's not really containing anything, right? But I wrote a letter last night to the federal government asking them to step in. If the MECP can't do their job, then can we have a federal officer come in and do it? I wrote that about 3 weeks ago too. I made a formal complaint to the federal government then, but now I've done so with a little stronger wording and those 9 pictures, right?
Actually, I see here. So there's a picture with a thing to stop the oil going down the stream, right? The water flows off a step, and then there's this kind of oil slick thing on the water in the water, right?
Yeah.
But chained a few foot from the edge on one side of the stream. Well, surely, what's going to happen? The oil's just going to go around that, isn't it?
Yeah, and anytime the boats go by and cause the waves, those things just get lifted up and the oil escapes anyways.
Yeah.
So it's good for a temporary fix, and then you're supposed to find the leak and stop it, right?
Yeah. So temporary being 1 or 2 days at the max when you're actually
it's been 1 month. 1 month since they've been led to this pipe. Now I have the blueprints of this pipe and where it goes. There's 2 pipes, and one goes one way, one goes the other, and they are not connected to each other. So this one pipe that it's coming out of is connected to about 8 to 10 factories.
Yeah.
So I don't see where the problem is for the MECP to go door to door or whatever they have to do now to find that. And it's been a month and they haven't done that yet. Apparently, they're not allowed to do that, but a federal officer has the jurisdiction to do what they want. Why doesn't the MECP?
Well, here's a question on this one. It might just be the picture. I'm seeing a picture here where you've got that froth and the barrier. Mm-hmm. The sausagey type barrier, but then the other side of the water looks as if it's got a thin film of oil slick on it.
Yes, actually, if you look at all 9 photos I took, you could see the oil sheen on the water in every photo.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
Usually you can't see that, but it was just the angle and the angle of the sun and everything, right? You have to be down right at water level and have the proper angle to see that.
Yeah, some it's not as clear as others, but
Mm-hmm. I was surprised that you could see the oil sheen in every picture this time, which is good, right? Like at least it shows that there's a problem here and they're not addressing it.
And why the heck are these things? I get the sausage-like things that are put on the water to stop the oil slick getting out. But why is there like a gap between them?
Someone said they think when the boats went by that it pushed it over to the side, and then they suggested that I pull it over. I will not touch anything of the MECP's. That's their job. You start fiddling with their stuff, and
Oh no,
then
no.
what? You're going to try and yell at them because it's done
Oh,
wrong, you know?
and there's probably some law that is interfering with government property, right?
Well, I would never interfere with anybody's business, right? The only thing you do is tell them if it's right or wrong. Other than that, you don't physically touch or do anything to what they've done, right? So for her to say for me to fix it, number one, I don't have the balance to go over to the edge and do that because of my injury. But number two, I would never touch anything anybody else has done. I would take pictures of it and tell them that there's a problem here, but I wouldn't touch it.
Yeah. And the point being is, well, actually, with your condition, I think it would be very dangerous too.
Yeah, I would have fell in for sure.
and you don't know what injuries that would cause, right?
Yeah, I don't take those risks. I know my limitations, and I won't do that, right? But it's really disturbing that there's nothing done to stop this yet, and I don't understand why.
Yeah.
There's no explanation of why this hasn't been stopped when the pipe has been, it's been told over a month where the source is coming from. So they should have been able to trace it from there within a couple days.
You're talking, you said 9 factories, right?
Yeah, I think there's 8 to 10 factories.
You could probably limit it if you were saying it's like cooking oils, or that's what you said the other day, like cooking oils or something similar, right?
Well, our samples was just a general test, and the test said it's an oil or a grease.
Oh, okay. So it could be like a car grease or something like that.
Yeah, it just said oil or a grease, and to get specific on that, it would have cost another $350, right? So
yeah. Well, I was going to say that surely that must, the conclusions, hey, the MECP has more money than you do. It would not, and they probably have the testing facilities of their own. They could probably tell exactly what this is.
Well, see, therein lies the problem with our government, Peter. They do not have the testing facilities of their own. They entrust private sector labs. Our government doesn't do their own testing. From Niagara Regional Health to MECP, they do not do their own testing. They rely on the private sector to do so. And to further that, the polluting company gets to pick the company that does the testing.
Yeah, surely, yeah.
So that's the way our system works. We are in the hands of the private sector. It's an entrusting system, and any experts the MECP are using are the experts that the private sector are using.
Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah.
So we have a real serious problem. And right now, this minor oil flow, right, is an example of what if this was radioactive? Our MECP are not capable of taking care of an emergency right now if they can't.
You wouldn't see radioactive, would you?
No. And what I'm getting at is, if we have a serious disaster right now, our MECP are not capable of doing their job. And I think they're proving this by not being able to fix this little oil slick.
Yeah. And the point being is little, right?
Yeah, and it was a year and a half ago that it was stated by the Auditor General that the MECP were not capable of doing their jobs. And I had a meeting with Ron Tripp and Wayne Gates, and I brought Ed Smith and Gary Wilkins with me, and we had a meeting on this issue, and that was a year and a half ago, and now it's all coming true.
Yeah.
So I find it all disturbing, and somebody should really speed up the process of finding why this is happening, and maybe discuss why there's an open pipe coming from the industrial section going into the Welland River unchecked.
Yeah. And okay, so you said you spoke with Wayne Gates on this matter, right? As well as the CAO for the city, right?
Ron Tripp from the region.
Ron Tripp from the region. Sorry, Yeah, sorry. Yeah. So you've spoken with both Wayne and Ron Tripp. Okay. So let's deal with Ron Tripp. Is any you'd think the region would have a bit more clout than the than the city.
Yeah, Ron Tripp walked away from the meeting and hasn't done a thing since then. As a matter of fact, they've forged ahead with doing things on the cyanamide property. So no, that meeting didn't amount to very much at all. And then, a year and a half down the line, an oil slick happens, and the MECP are not capable of doing their jobs like the Auditor General said. That's why I wrote to the federal government, and I'm asking them to step in, because this is to the point of ridiculous.
My next question was going to be, so what if anything has Wayne Gates done about this?
Well, I've been emailing Wayne Gates, and I had a meeting with him a week ago on this issue. He's been trying to follow up on the MECP and get information from them, and he has gotten nothing from them as well. So nobody's gotten answers from the MECP. They took their own samples, and they say they still haven't gotten results from that, which I find hard to believe. But I'll tell you another thing.
It's a month ago since they were there, wasn't it?
Yes, they were. They were there on the 2nd of August.
Wait, I trust that, I trust. Well, maybe I shouldn't, but there's a certain element of trust that we expect our government to do things when we ask them to.
Well, let's put it this way, Peter. If the MECP are not doing their job, do I phone the police then?
Yeah.
Do I phone the fire department?
Yeah.
Who do I call to take care of an environmental issue?
And hey, I suppose you might fulfill the category of a class member of a class action suit, but I can't see it even getting off the ground.
Yeah. I never ever go into those situations, because every time you make a class action suit, it becomes about property or something like that. And then the companies that are filthy rich just pay that off and make you sign a document stating that you can't talk about it anymore. So I could never stop talking about this issue, so I would never sign such a document, so I wouldn't get the out of court settlement.
Yeah.
So that's why I've never gone lawsuit or class action lawsuit on any of these issues, even though I think some of them could go that way. I don't think if you make it about money, which it's not about money to me, it's about cleaning it up for our kids and our grandkids, right?
Yeah. Well, and if this were, I know that generally, right? Yeah. Generally, oil is not a major problem, right? Oil is not, it's a pollutant. Yes, it can do damage, but it doesn't do damage like, as you say, radioactive or some horrible chemical. But if this oil is going in the system, it's about just what's going in the system. So if some dangerous chemical were going in here, our Simpsons three-eyed fish could be a reality, couldn't they?
Yeah, and there's somebody saying that there is still a dioxin blob down at the Chippewa River. And I know a couple people that are going to do some scuba diving to investigate very shortly. So there could still be a dioxin blob down there. And we're going to find out within a couple of weeks, probably.
Be interested to know about that one.
Yeah, because a lot of the tests around here, just because you don't test for something doesn't mean it's not there. And that's the game our government plays. So when they do an environmental study and they do not test for furans and dioxin, that doesn't mean it's not there. They just didn't test for it. And that's an overlook and an oversight that should be done in this area, considering all the chemicals that we've delved in throughout the decades, right?
Yeah. And in relation to your pictures, there's a few comments here. Ever think it might come from okay? I have tons of pictures of oils and on top of water at Duff. Just a thought, right? He's talking about Gary Wilkins was talking about your picture and saying, ever think it might be a family of beavers? I don't think so somehow.
Yeah,
Where they've trapped something upstream.
When you could follow this stream right to the pipe and see it coming out of the pipe. There's no questions asked that this is oil coming from the industrial section of Niagara Falls. And again, it bears the question of why is there an open pipe coming from the industrial section when this is the second time within a year that we've found something coming out of here. So I think they got to address this issue because they want to put housing here, right?
And in relation to your picture, we've got a load of comments as well. In relation to your picture, Bruce Kinghorn remembers, he says, makes me remember when I was a kid that the sludge came out of the US side of the border.
Yeah, we've witnessed a lot of different times that the U.S. border has released, and we used to live down the gorge as kids. It was our playground, so we've witnessed it many times. Sludges and foams coming through the river that are just disgusting.
Okay, so Chris Simone is basically saying he's out to inspect the water at sunrise on Saturday and get a sample if he sees anything.
Thank you, Christopher.
Right. Morning, Chris, and morning, Gary. Don't forget to pet the beaver while you're there. and Gary's basically, he believes Wayne's weak as a leader. That's fine. You got that right to believe that. Good morning, Niagara, from Karen Fraser. And she's asking, are these problems due to Ford's cutbacks?
I believe that the ministry has lost some of its power. Yes. I don't, the ministry has explained that they don't have the right to go door to door right now to these companies and do something. I don't understand that. If you're the officer of the environment and you know it's coming from a pipe that's attached to the company, why can't you write a letter to them and say, we've discovered that there's an oil sheen on the Welland River. Somebody's processes are putting this into a sewer, and we need to address it immediately. Why can the MECP do this? I don't understand.
And Cindy Crosby is saying, if I recall correctly, you guys started notifying since the 2nd of July 24. Exactly what we were just saying.
Yeah, the first report was on the 2nd by a boater and a kayaker, and then I followed up on that about 5 days later, and then it's been ongoing since then. So I would say it's been going on before the 2nd. We just found
just because you only found it on the 2nd doesn't mean that's the start of it, right?
Yeah, so I fear it's been happening longer than that, and it's a part of somebody's processes, like they're cleaning out something every week that has oil in it, and it's going into the sewer or something like that, right?
Yeah. Absolutely, and that's part of your problem, I think.
Yeah, because if it only happens on a Friday, right, and then the rest of the stuff gets dumped through the pipe, and then at the end of the pipe is a little bit of a deep ditch, and they said the last time that they sucked up a bunch of goo from there, and that's why it was taking long to release into the stream, right? So say Friday there's a lot of this substance that comes through the pipe, then it'll leach out, probably take 5 days to finally dissipate from the stream, right?
Yeah. All right. And the trouble is, it's just like, I don't know, we just need to get something. I'm sure I'm sure whoever's doing it probably doesn't realize the depth of the problem or the potential.
Or they think it's going to the wastewater treatment plant, which is not an excuse because it shouldn't be done that way either.
It shouldn't be going down the drain anyway, should it?
Correct, but a lot of people think that a lot of the sewers go to the wastewater treatment plant, and so it'll get treated, right?
Yeah.
And the wastewater treatment plant doesn't treat for heavy metals, right? wastewater treatment plant doesn't treat for stuff like that.
And
It's
how would it deal with because what will happen is if this water were to go to the wastewater treatment plant instead of the Welland River, it would get basically sprinkled onto a layer. It would be problematic for the wastewater treatment anyway, wouldn't it?
yeah, because wastewater treatment plant relies on gravity to do its job.
Yeah, and
Heavy
you'd end
metal
up putting
sinks.
an oil slick on the top of the treatment process area, wouldn't you?
Yeah, and your equipment, right? That's
Yeah.
what I'm wondering about the hydro because this oil, a lot of it will be going straight down through the canal and must be gooping up their equipment, right?
Yeah. Actually, that's a fair comment. Yeah.
Yeah,
Why don't you ask? Actually, why don't you ask them?
yeah. I was thinking of that. I fired off a letter yesterday to the federal government, and I was thinking of doing something like that because it's time to reach out to others and try and get them involved if the MECP is going to keep dragging their feet on this.
Well, actually, that is a fair comment because if you've got an oil, it may have zero effect on them, but they may be scratching their head up, the same as you are about where the frig the oil was coming from.
Yeah, yeah, and I don't think there's enough oil to do that. But when I first found it, there would be because when I first found it, it was really heavy, and you could smell it before you got there. Yesterday when I was there, I could smell the petrol once I got down near the water.
Well, okay, so Gary makes a point. Who remembers the mayor saying, "Don't pour your cooking oil grease down the drain"? Yet this is okay. And I bet hey, in the average household, people forget once in a while and just toss it down the drain, don't they?
Or people don't realize what kind of damage it does. Just frivolous and don't think about it, right?
Yeah.
And that's and that's why we got an industrial pipe that's going directly into the Welland River. Actually, two of them, right? And it's coming right from the industrial section. On this side of the on this side of the pipe, there's some heavy chemical companies that are attached to it.
Yeah.
So, and I know that with our samples, there were high levels of other toxins too. So I think there could be a detergent or something that's going in this area too, which we have written to the ministry and asked them questions about.
It's funny actually. If you've seen sometimes in rivers, you see areas which seem to have froth on them.
Yeah, that's how this is. Where this little waterfall is falling, there's a little foam that's happening from it.
Oh, there's always a bit, where there's a waterfall, there's always a bit of foam anyway, even if you've got no contaminants in the water. Right. But, I've often, like, you're driving down the countryside somewhere. I couldn't give you an example of anywhere specific, but you're driving down the countryside and then you look at you kind of look and you see a stream running down the side of the road and you're going, wow, there's a lot of foam on that river.
Yeah, that's a disturbing sign for sure. You go down to the Maid of the Mist and look at the foam that's down there. It'll sicken you. It's a brown color. It's 4 to 6 inches thick, and it's really rude looking, and it's from all the detergents and stuff from all the factories along the Fort Erie and everything, right? And the foam is very disgusting. It's got a smell to it, and it's all in the lagoon of the Maid of the Mist.
Yeah, and yeah, okay.
It's just a prime example that you could find it if you want to, right? That foam is present in a lot of our waters.
Okay, Chris Zamoni asks a question. What's the best practice for household grease and detergent disposal?
I put it in a separate container and dispose of it through the waste process, right? We don't dump it down the drain.
But detergents go down the drain all the time because if you wash dishes in the sink, you have to you have to let the water out, don't you?
Yes, yeah, and that's that is what our wastewater treatment plant is for, right? Um, and and apparently the wastewater treatment plant, it relies on gravity to do its work, but it does a pretty good job according to my science people. I've
But
questioned.
this is not new technology. This is kind of 200-year-old technology. We've been using this same type of treatment plants forever.
Yes, yes, and I don't know. You could smell the wastewater treatment plant down Stanley Avenue way when the wind's blowing the wrong way, and it is pungent. And the new wastewater treatment plant's going to be even bigger because it's going to be treating waste all the way up to Thorold with all the new houses that are built there. So it's Southern Niagara region that this wastewater treatment plant is going to be for. And I really fear for the people that live in Chippewa in that area of what kind of smells they're going to have to put up with.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and this is another one of these where when it comes to the council making a decision, it's like, some council is going to go, well, I don't want that in my backyard.
Well, can you imagine, you build $1 million home in a brand new neighborhood, and then they build the wastewater treatment plant right across the way from you without telling you that was going to happen, right?
But hey, $1 million home isn't very much these days. You mean a $5 million home?
Sorry, I'm showing my age.
You're showing your age, sir. Yes, you're thinking of a time when there were like only a dozen $1 million homes in the city.
Yeah,
we're getting close to most of them being that way now, right?
Yeah, but just imagine that though. You're building a new home in a new neighborhood, and then all of a sudden they've decided they're going to put a wastewater treatment plant right across your way, and you just spent your life savings buying this house, and now you're stuck with what you're stuck with.
Yeah.
I don't think that's like the people on Lundy's Lane and the quarry idea, right? Build the neighborhoods and then suggest the quarry, right?
Yeah. Well, to be honest, I don't think you live city life, and in all honesty, one of the big problems about city life has always been wastewater treatment plants. I'd have to say that probably half the places I've lived in my life, if you get the wind in the wrong direction, boy, does it smell.
Yeah, well, look at in Paris. They couldn't even swim in the rivers to do the triathlons because of the
that triathlon. They were supposed to. They had planned that they were going to swim the swim bit was going to be in the Seine.
Yeah, they were going to cancel the swim and have a double run event. So you would run, then bicycle, then run instead of do the swim because the contaminated water was so bad. And then they waited and waited and waited and finally found a day where the contaminated water wasn't as bad as it usually is. And then they swam. I don't know if I was a swimmer, if I would have done that.
All right. Chris Simone says, what is between Bridge and Buttery East of Victoria Avenue? A quarry? No, that used to be the old... okay, Bridge and Buttery, quarry. No, that's... I think he's talking about the trucks going in and out of the CN property land.
Yeah, I don't know what they're doing back there, but I think they're doing some work on the old CN property where the railroad tracks were.
Yeah.
But there are a lot of trucks going back there 24/7 for the first little while in the winter. I don't know if it's still doing it. But
no, they're down to, actually they locked up the entranceway at the CN at one point. They've got concrete blocks across much of that CN entranceway. You could just freely drive in there at one point. Now you can't. Now they're limiting the entrance to it. And I think whilst there was building going on that was CN approved, I think there were also road trucks dumping there.
Yeah. Yeah, because they've gotten rid of a lot of railroad tracks, and they're probably trying trying to
Well,
fill in a lot of things, right?
the other thing was that it seemed like they're doing some new development on new tracks in that area as well. And I don't even know that we would necessarily hear about that through city council.
Yeah, I'd imagine they're gonna have to when they want trains to come in for people moving system type thing from Toronto and back.
I mean, you
That
see, in fact, up at Walpole and Walpole and Victoria Avenue, there, Stanley. I mean, Walpole and Stanley area where there's that tracks across there. It looks as if what they're preparing for is extra tracks coming in, because now where they had two lights, they have a third light, although they don't have a third set of tracks yet.
Yeah, I could see something like that happening because as we're requesting more train traffic from Toronto, they got rid of a lot of the tracks before because this used to be a very busy rail yard, right?
Yeah.
It was a very busy rail yard, and there were a lot more tracks then than there are now. And those tracks got taken up through the years as less and less factories were working. And all those rail yards used to go directly to the factories, right? So as the factories disappeared, the train tracks disappeared, right?
Right. So Chris Simone said a lot of trucks and homeless encampments. I tried to cut through yesterday from Buttery to Bridge, but it was like a war zone, right? I didn't. Yeah. Okay. So you probably were doing that during the day. Gary's saying we went through there yesterday, and something is going on back there.
Yeah, I believe so,
Further, I remember when there were 8 rows of tracks when I worked at Cyanamid. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And in fact, I thought there were actually more at one stage as well.
Yeah, possibly. Like I said, they used to go to every single factory, right?
Yeah. Well, that was the shunting yard at one point, wasn't it? You know?
Yeah. Yeah, it was very busy rail yard when I was a child, nonstop 24/7.
Yeah. Yeah. And they probably, you know, like many shunting yards, they would have hooked up trains. All right. Okay. So Peter Baker's saying, hope to see your Canal Days Festival in Port Coburn starting today. Tonight's featured performer is Tom, Life's a Highway Cochran.
He's awesome. Great music.
Right. Okay. You have pictures of it, Mike.
Of what?
The 8 rows of tracks when I worked at. No, I don't know.
I think we do have some photos of it. Yes, I think we do. I could post them today. Thanks, Gary. You're right. Yeah. I believe we do. Yep.
Yeah.
So it'll just be a remember thing. Remember when the railroad track was like this?
yeah. Actually, it is interesting. I'd like to see that. Okay, let's move on to something else. There's a coalition of Ontario developers that have written to 3 levels of government to ask for a reduction in taxes on new homes, right? And this is an interesting one. They're called Coalition Against New Home Taxes, or CANT, right? CANT. Who invents a name like that? CANT. Yeah, they can't do anything about it. Yeah. No. So they want to see federal and provincial governments remove HST on all new housing, as they've done for rental housing construction. And you know what? In some respects, I understand this, right? Why do we have HST on housing? It adds to the cost of a new home.
Well, we got to admit that our government has gotten addicted to the property taxes, and they replaced all the lost industry. And that was part of the problem in Canada. When Canada lost all its industry, they put all their effort into, holy cow, look at the real estate gold mine. We can make our taxes on this now. So the government got addicted to the property tax, and now we're in a trap because real estate's too high and everybody's broke, right? So,
and they're basically saying, this coalition is saying that they'd like to see municipalities reduce development charges to the way they were in 2009, but adjusted for inflation. Well, that's an impossible calculation in and of itself. But so what they said, we felt one way we could do that would be to sign a pledge to say that for every dollar the taxes are cut, the group of developers will cut their prices dollar for dollar. All right. Well, okay, so fair enough. But they're basically saying that in 2009, taxes accounted for 12% of the cost of the average condo build in Toronto. And they're saying now that taxes account for 29% of the same home.
So that shows you that the government has gotten addicted to these property taxes and everything else associated with them.
But again, we were talking about the other day how the cutting of taxes on the cutting of development charges for new homes
has
is
cost us
our
dearly.
municipalities.
Yes. Yeah. So we're going through that right now, where a decision was made by the Ford government to cut the development fees, right? And it's been downloaded to the municipalities in the region. And who has to pay for that? The taxpayers, right? We're the ones that got to pay for that. And we're going to pay dearly for it right now. And now if these guys get their way, obviously that money the government was using for things, for programs, what's going to happen to them?
Well, yeah. And here's an interesting thing, though, that if you're living in one of those newer, the rate of tax in somewhere like Niagara Falls, the rate of tax is generally associated. It goes up by percentage points in all instances, but if you're living in an older home in an older part of the town versus a brand new home in a brand new part of town, you're probably paying half the tax in an older home in an old part of town than you are in the brand new home for the same home.
They could only raise your taxes so high per year, right? So they can't say, well, the guy up the street's house sold for $600,000 and he's paying taxes on it. Now you have to pay those taxes.
I think what is happening is basically what is happening, your level of tax is set at the same level as it was before. What happens is when they put new houses up, new developments up, your what's it called? MACP?
MPAC. Yeah.
MPAC. Yep. Thank you. That's what it was. MPAC. Your MPAC rating for the old house is, even though you're building a brand new house that has the same dimensions, etc., as an old house that's already been in the system, the brand new house gets a new rating.
Yes.
Right. Yes. From MPAC, where the old house gets an old rating. And what happens is that they can raise, there's additional taxes built into the new system. So you end up with the new houses, say an old house getting, say, $3,000 in tax, and the new house of the same size getting $5,000 in tax.
Yeah, and then you end up with a government that wants the people that have been in the houses for a really long time to move out so those taxes could go up, right?
Yeah.
And that's not a good situation. We live in our homes and we find our way to survive in this world by negotiating our mortgages down through the years and starting to get comfortable payments and everything. And then if your house taxes go through the roof and you're on a fixed income, you're gonna fall behind and you're gonna get hurt by this, right? People are paying more for property tax now than they did for their mortgages.
At the moment, I think that system about the new houses on, the sold new house, when a house is newly sold, that the tax goes up at that point is probably a saving grace for a lot of people.
Yeah. Yes. But it's harsh, right? People that are retired are paying more for property tax than they are for their mortgage.
Yeah.
That's a harsh thing to have to swallow, right?
But again, what I don't like is, there's been some suggestions that you should not pay property tax after 65. I've got some mixed feelings about that. Part of me, I'm saying, yeah, absolutely. But part of me says that, hey, every house should actually be making its contribution to the city budget, even those for retired people.
I think you have to have a standard of property tax for sure. Because you got to pay for sewage, you got to
Yeah.
pay for the infrastructure, you have to pay for things like that. You have to get the money somewhere, right?
Mhm.
Now,
What I don't agree with is options that you can defer your property tax. No deferrals, because basically you're causing the homeowner to basically impact their heir, what their heirs may inherit.
yeah, and that's not right.
Yeah, that's wrong.
You know that money's going to get lost somewhere down the line, and then the city doesn't get their payment, right?
And well, no, actually, further, the city more or less takes over the property at the death of the person,
Yeah,
and that's
yeah,
wrong.
yeah. And I don't know. I'm watching as people on fixed incomes are really falling behind more and more because of everything going up, including
Well,
property tax. And it's
fixed
just,
income. Well, fixed income. I saw this meme on Facebook the other day that was kind of saying 2019 0% increase, 2020 0% increase, 2021 0% increase, 2022 0% increase. When the hell am I going to get paid more?
yeah, it doesn't make sense, does it?
Yeah.
You got people going on strike because they've had decades without a big raise, right?
Yeah.
And then people on a fixed income, well, they can't go on strike.
Well,
So
many people who work for small businesses, it's really hard. Many small businesses, not all small businesses, many small businesses can't afford to pay more than about minimum wage anyway. Many small businesses can afford to pay much higher than that, and they do, right?
yeah,
However, the problem lies is that it's very hard for small business to actually break that trend. And very often they're caught in the trap as well, because many owners of small businesses might do it better than the average person, but they sometimes they're the last person to get paid.
right, right.
You
Yeah,
know,
so I don't know if these developers would even go dollar for dollar on that. That's always the problem, right? When
yeah, I
we
don't see it. I
when we
don't
give
see it.
when we give rich people money, it never trickles back to us. Uh, the whole idea
And
of
and
trickle down.
besides which, how much are we talking about? The price of the house is going to come down by 5,192.76.
Yeah, yeah, and
Or am I
trickle
being
down theories
cynical?
never worked, right? Trickle down
Yeah.
theories never ever worked. They always had the assumption that if you make the person on top rich, he's going to share the wealth with the people down below. When has that ever
Well,
happened, right?
it does happen to us, to some extent that does happen, because the thing is, the person, to some extent that happens because of the fact that the rich person goes out and buys things in the economy, but
Yeah, but
only to a moderate level.
but the theory is supposed to be,
Yeah.
if he's getting rich, then he shares the wealth, right?
Yeah.
And that wealth has never been shared, right? Not like, you're right, it does go back in the community when he spends money, but he's supposed to share the wealth. That's the
Yeah.
idea, and that
Yeah.
never happens, right?
Okay, so what this coalition is saying is that if it left untaxed is high, if left uncorrected, high taxes on new homes will put further strain on housing supply in the coming years. And one of the things that they've been saying is that where we're in 2024 compared to 2 years ago, in 2024, most housing developments are stagnating and dying.
Yeah, and they're blaming high interest rates for that too, right?
Yeah.
So I'd like to know if interest rates go up and it ends up breaking somebody that's going to build a building or a house.
Well, yeah.
then that's no good. Aren't they supposed to be able to withstand that? Or isn't there supposed to be a vetting system to ensure that the person putting the money in can handle that kind of situation? So
Yeah,
using
but you see, again, they make a loan on a, they'll make a 1 or 2 or 3 year loan type of thing to get the money to develop that property. And if those rates go, double or triple, that kills them.
well, that's how we ended up with our holes on Ferry Street and in Chippewa, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And that's again, no vetting process to see if they could handle a stress test, like no stress tests, right? And I think those stress tests have to be done, and those people
Well,
have
yeah,
to be able
but
to
how
pass
much
the
of
stress
these,
test.
but how much of these development charges have been due to the fact that the Bank of Canada has actually, with the interest rate went up from 2 point something to 5, didn't it?
Right.
Right. That hurts.
Well, remember in the 80s when it was,
And if you've got $1 million loan, that hurts even more.
yeah,
right?
what was it in the 80s? 14%? Remember the 80s?
Yeah, well, we didn't have that in UK in the 80s.
Oh,
I was talking with Dave about that. It was the 70s where ours was through the roof.
oh yeah. So ours was in the 80s, and interest rates, I think, if I remember correctly, were like 14% back then.
Yeah.
No,
we had the same problem in the 70s in England.
Yeah. So we got through that.
Yeah, we don't want to ever be back there again.
Right.
High cost of,
but you would think you would learn from that, right?
Yeah, and essentially, companies that are doing these builds rely upon that ability to borrow in order to, actually make those homes, right?
Yeah, and therein lies the question: is that the way to do business, right? Should you have the capital up front?
Let's be honest. Every corporation does it, right?
Well, yeah,
whether you're making widgets in Don Murray Street or building homes in Calogero Estates, you borrow money to make money.
Yes. Yep. And
right,
and we're witnessing a failure on a lot of those issues, right?
Yeah.
And again, taxpayers will pay the price for it in the long run, and we're paying the price for it right now. And these developers are saying that they will stop development, and then there'll be higher unemployment from this. So obviously, that's going to scare the government into something.
Well, there is certainly, I get what their concerns are. Basically, housing starts. So, according to CMHC, housing starts across Ontario in June are down 44% compared to the year beforehand.
Yeah, and we're witnessing that as the developers are walking away in Niagara, right?
Yeah.
We're witnessing it ourselves.
Yeah.
And it's a scary thing.
Yeah.
Our city council's handcuffed right now because what do?
Well, in fact, actually, exactly that. According to the rules, they're doing exactly what they should be doing, approving new starts, right?
Yeah.
And it's, as with every new start, they have that job of ensuring the new housing fits the character of the city that needs to go, how we need to be developing the city according to the city plan, etc. And I think the city council is broadly doing its job, right? The problems we have is not related to approvals, it's related to non-starts or
stalls,
partial starts or stalls.
Yeah, and what does the city council do now, right? The development started, they've walked away. Now you're left with waiting for interest rates to come down for them to start up again.
Yeah.
There's something's got to give, and there's got to be a change in the system because this is obviously not working.
Yeah.
And the banks punishing everybody because they've been giving false mortgages all these years is another problem, right? giving out $1 million mortgage when someone's making $150,000 a year is a pretty, it's a pretty thin line there, right? I think the banks are living on the edge with some of the mortgages that they're giving out, and it's a very volatile situation.
Oh yeah, yeah. And it's kind of weird, so and of course even the job market is volatile today, right?
Yeah, there seems to be confusion because you read that they're having problems finding laborers and workers for stuff, and yet the jobs are available. So it's a very confusing situation, right?
Yeah.
We got a whole bunch of people in from asylum seekers. Apparently, nobody wants to work, they say. So where are all the workers? If we got all these asylum seekers and they need people to work, I don't understand why the positions aren't being filled.
Yeah. That's weird. Okay. Moving on to another one. So a Reddit user was shared a bizarre lease agreement that they were served by a landlord in Guelph, who put in a whole heap of strange demands, asking tenants to pay $20 a night for an overnight guest. Now, this is actually something that little bit of legal advice here. There is only one lawful lease that is permitted in Ontario, and that is called the Ontario Standard Lease. You can download it from an Ontario website, and you just basically search Ontario Standard Lease. If you're given leases that have Ontario Real Estate Association (OREA) on it, that is not permissible as a lease today in Ontario. The only standard lease you can do is that Ontario Standard Lease. Furthermore, you cannot take away a person's rights that they have in law. You cannot, even in the Schedule A, which you can add to, or Schedule 1 that you can add to the standard lease, you can't take away a person's rights. And charging $20 fee for an overnight guest is taking away a right for a person to have overnight guests. It's not permissible.
But we're talking about really strange situations in today's world, right? Where if you go to rent a house, right, and they'll say, "Oh, there's a house for rent for $2,500 a month," right? And you'll go to look at the rental. Oh, the 2 bedrooms downstairs are Airbnbs, and it's a shared kitchen, but the house is still $2,500 a month.
Yeah,
So
no.
We are getting into really strange territory here with what's going on with rentals and stuff. And,
well, the worst about rentals is you probably remember the day when you first got your first place. You were probably whether you rented or bought, you were probably sharing it with a bunch of other people your age, right?
Yeah, I lived with 2 other guys at one point in time. And,
exactly. Yeah. And that's what we all did, right?
Yeah.
I bought a house with 2 other guys. When I moved out, I was the first person to move out. They had to buy me out.
Right.
I didn't know exactly, when I first moved out, and I didn't know how exactly that operated. But I what I had was the money in order to buy the new place that I wanted to buy. So when they they said, "Oh," the solicitor said, "Oh, they have to buy you out," and I go, "Oh, does that mean I get extra money from the sale of my from the house?" And yeah, it basically did.
Yeah.
So that was a bonus that I never counted on.
Right. And so, well, in these rental things we have now, they're shared kitchens.
Yeah.
You're renting a room, you're not renting the house.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So it's more like a short-term rental agreement more than it is a normal rental agreement. And so if someone has someone staying overnight and they're sharing the kitchen, that becomes an issue, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah, I know.
So that's what we're talking about here. These are strange rental agreements all around. It's not like the normal rental agreement you or I are used to, where you either rent the whole house or you rent the whole apartment. You're now
Yeah.
sharing the house and sharing the apartment. All you're getting is a room that's yours for privacy, and the rest of the house is shared.
Yeah. Yeah. And the thing is about that, it's like, okay, so landlord also permits prohibits tenants from throwing parties or using a private washer, dryer, dishwasher, or high drain appliances, including heaters, air conditioners, and the like without consent. Well, actually, you cannot, as a landlord, again, under the new law, and I can't remember the name. It's one of these really, really odd named laws. Basically, you can't stop people from putting an air conditioner up.
Right.
Air conditioners have to be available to be installed. There can be a premium. You can charge extra, like you can charge an extra $50 or something a month for the electricity usage, but you're not permitted to stop a person from putting an air conditioner in.
Right.
And the uplift in power charges has to be deemed reasonable. And who, of course, is going to be those that deem them reasonable?
The landlord.
The landlord and tenant board, actually. But
yeah.
But again, yeah.
So in this one, they're saying they're locking out the heating systems and stuff like that. Does the landlord live in this place?
Probably not.
Yeah.
I tell you, if I was the landlord, if I was living in a place where the landlord was living in, I think he'd be strangled in a week, wouldn't he?
Yeah, and they also said there were times that this landlord came and stayed there while he was doing things in the house, unannounced and everything, right? Very strange setup. I don't think that I would appreciate any of what's being said here. I don't consider that a rental, right? Shared room, shared kitchen, shared bathroom is not a rental in my mind. That's more like a hotel that you're living in above a motel or something like that. You know what I mean? Like I would never.
I love the response on this, right? It's basically a jail. Who the hell do you think you are to tell me what I can and can't do when I'm renting my home?
Yeah, that's the way I would feel too.
And hey, I know the saying comes from England, but I'm gonna bastardize it. A Canadian's home is his castle.
So that's our escape from the world, right?
Yeah, exactly. Whether you're renting or you're buying, that home is like that parcel of land that is your, something that you can kind of come back. You can, hey, and on today, hey, I'm done for the weekend. Kick my work shoes off, kick my work clothes off. I'm doing nothing. Beer, darling.
Yeah. Your home is your sanctuary, right?
Your home is that kind of sanctuary,
Yeah. And I feel that way. My little plot of land is my little private area. Leave me alone, right? And with these new rental agreements, you aren't getting your privacy, and you don't seem to be living alone anymore. It's the only way to make ends meet with the high cost of rentals and housing today. And it's unfortunate, but that's the world we're going towards, right? There's a house across the street. I think there's 12 people living in it, and it's just a wartime house.
Well, okay, that's and that's called overcrowding.
Yeah. Right? And I believe they do shifts. As one works the midnight shift, someone else uses that bed. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
hey, those tenants there should be taking them to the LTB. It's called overcrowding.
Yeah, but it's happening at every other house. I know. There's at least 3 houses on my street like that.
Yeah. But how do you deal with Saturday and Sunday when you've got those kind of systems?
There's a lot of cars in the driveway. And parked all around the street. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I know where you're coming from. I understand where you're coming from. Yeah, but it's like, how do you do? Who sleeps in the bed on Saturday?
Yeah, I don't know how they figure it out, but this is how they're living.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
it's probably the only way to do it, right? In today's world.
yeah. Oh, I know, I know. It's become bizarre. But then again, I also have to state that it's okay. So let us take a pause on criticizing landlords and criticizing the whole housing situation, and let's go another direction. Um, when I don't know whether I think most people would agree that probably from the 90s till about 2016, most of the house prices in and around Niagara stalled. There
Yeah.
was hardly any increase in the price of homes between those years, sometime in the 90s to about 2016. It's about 2016 they started to go up. Now the problem lies is that what really should have happened is if they had gone up by 1 or 2 percentage points in on average in the year, the house prices we have today in the Niagara market would have been attained over time, right? We wouldn't have had the peak at 22 and now the prices that we've got to, we'd have slowly gotten there over time. And what would have also happened over time is we'd have had the similar increases to the rates of pay in Niagara. Trouble is that Niagara house prices went up bang in one bundle, right? And Niagara rates of pay did not,
Yes. And I
right?
think that's across Canada, right?
Yeah. And the point about it is that how many people do we have that are now on to just above minimum wage? And when I say just above minimum wage, for example, let's say that you were up, it was put up from 15, well, it was put up from 14 something to 15, and it went up to 1680, I think it is right now. What happens to the people in that period that were actually outside of minimum wage, but now they would be caught in the minimum wage trap because
Yeah,
their wages didn't go up at the same time. So if 4 years ago you were on 1680, now you're on 1680, but it's now minimum wage.
yeah, the gap is closed huge.
Yeah.
Factories workers that used to make $25 to $30 an hour, and the minimum wage was $6.50 an hour. Minimum wage goes up to $16 an hour, and the factories workers are still making the same amount of money. Their wage hasn't coincided with the raise, right?
Yeah,
So
exactly.
slowly
And
but surely,
that's a big problem.
so
We
slow,
actually need higher value jobs in this area.
yeah. What I was going to say is slowly but surely, the factory worker the wage hasn't changed, right?
Yep.
Um, when I was in factory work in the 80s, I was making bigger money than most people are making now. And I
Yeah.
find that deeply disturbing. That means that wages are going down through the years while all these prices are going up. Financially, you could see that it's not going to work out.
Yeah. Exactly. And that's a big problem. How the hell do you manage to do that without, how much you get past this?
Yeah, that's a hard thing. Let's not forget that huge bonuses to CAOs and huge profits run away with these companies are a big problem without sharing the wealth. Um, and when you see a CAO within the first 2 weeks of a year uh, have already made more than the average worker, there is something really wrong there, right? So
Yeah.
we've
All right.
lost touch. We've lost all our power in that sense, and financially we're going backwards instead of forwards as the years are going up and everything else is going
Got a
up.
couple of comments to throw at you. Peter Biker, give them a chance and they'll charge you with thumbtacks next. Okay. Chris Simone, employs people, creates new things, risk of startup, initial initial macaroni and cheese for 2 years. Yeah. and all that to lose while workers fix their resume and get a new job. Yeah, I get it. Okay. The taxpayer slowly become an entrepreneurial servant of the administrative classes.
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, unfortunately. Chris, thank you. And I think we can kind of call it a quits on that at that point.
Okay, then Niagara, we'll have a great weekend. Hopefully today we'll get the rain over with, and then we'll get on with some sunshine. And
But it's gonna hurt like hell today, isn't it? With the steam.
yeah, but it's cooling down the temperatures, so that's nice. The humidity should be gone for now, and we really needed a break on that.
Yeah. All right. Well, have a great weekend, everybody.
Have a great week.